Would you please welcome Lindsay Fox?
Well, it's great to be here tonight in the company of so many former Melbourne High School old boys. During my years at Melbourne High in 51 and 52, if my exam results had have continued, I would never have made it to Form 4. After repeating my second year in Form 3, let alone 2 years in Form 2 at Toorak Central. It was at that time I realised that my future was elsewhere and not academic. As I got a little older and wiser, I realised what a great privilege it was to go to Melbourne High School. At 18 years of age, I did my national service in the Army at Puckapunyal, commencing on the 7th of August. The discipline that was part of the national service process became a turning point in my life. I learned to appreciate how lucky I was being one of 2 children and having caring and sharing parents of a working class background. All of this combined with my involvement in sport, ice hockey and football, gave me the importance of being a team player and being prepared to sacrifice my body for the benefit of the team. These lessons became strong foundations for the growth and development of Linfox. After national service, I was operating one truck until I was about 20 years of age. When I turned 21, buying my second truck saw me gain 100% growth in 1 year, from 1 to 2. My business at the start of that period was with that second truck. I put on the back of each truck, "You're passing another fox." That's where it started, at the second truck. At 22, I married my girlfriend of 6 years. She being a good Catholic, me careless a Protestant, and we produced 6 kids in 7 years. By the time I was 30 years old, I had 30 trucks. In 1968, we won the contract for the distribution of Courage breweries, and the fleet went to 60 trucks. By this time, I'd learnt the importance of the word cash flow and consolidated our business with the following principles. We still use those ones today. We call it the TIL principle at Linfox. T is for trust. If you half trust somebody, you don't trust them. I is for integrity. If you deal with people with no integrity, you deserve what you get. And L is for loyalty. Give me somebody with 100% loyalty and 85% of ability before I will accept the opposite of that position. The aspects of what we started with was looking for long-term contracts, blue chip accounts, and people that can pay their bills every 7 days. We had similar arrangements for suppliers, with a little difference. We got 60 to 90 days credit. You heard the stories of the trucks and all the other bits and pieces. I don't have to go into any of them again. But one of the interesting factors today is we probably have a turnover in excess of $3 billion a year, and we pay $4 million a day wages. I get the shits every leap year. The difference between Linfox and our opponents is the amount of work we spend on training, education, zero tolerance for alcohol and drugs, speed limits and control of driving times, and best equipment for all of our operations. We have become, at Linfox, the benchmark for our industry. School days. Starting Monday morning, the music master, Artie Larson, would conduct the school song. A little frail man that waved his hands, conducting the choirs and everything else at the time. And strung like its pillars, the school stands behind us. He emphasised the importance of those words. And it's interesting that even tonight, when we all started singing it, I still got tears in my eyes. Then the breach would go ahead, the brig would then go ahead and do the preaching of a sermon. On one account, it was what's mine's mine and what's thine's thine. Is Alan Gregory here tonight? Okay, he's not. On one account, during the process of that, what's mine's mine and what's thine's thine, that morning prior to assembly, I stole Alan Gregory's atlas out of his desk. And during his passionate presentation on what's mine's mine and what's thine's thine, I shit myself. I went lickety-split back to that desk, got the atlas out and stuck it back, and I was going to apologise to Alan tonight if he had been here. At least it was a special situation. And it's interesting that you can still recall these things 65 years after you've left school. And that was the impact that was part and parcel of this great institution that we're all proud to be part of. Another one of the big speeches was about the brewery dray. Alan Ray, are you here? Alan, you tell it better than me. Come up here. And this only confirms the impact on the students that you can go like that out of the air and pull it on, and somebody can come and virtually repeat word for word what he heard the brig say at a Monday morning assembly 65 years ago. Alan.
Lindsay, there are a number of people here today who wouldn't know what a draft horse was or a brewery wagon. But the fact is that in Victoria Parade, there was the home office of the CUB, the Carlton United Brewery, and they used to make the beer there, and they'd had these draft horses, beautiful Clydesdales, would pull the brewery wagons and deliver to the pubs, whatever. But this particular day, the draft horses must have been into the hops or whatever they make there, and they went out on the road, and you wouldn't believe they let go, and some big dollops appeared on the road, you see. And there's this little sparrow that was chirping along. Started eating the dollops, and the more he ate, the chirpier he got. And out of the sky was this hawk. The hawk came down, swooped down, and gobbled up the sparrow. Anyhow, the moral of the story is, George was going to say, if you live on filth, don't speak about it. But there's this little guy, Fat Wilkinson, said, don't pick shit.
65 years ago. Another couple of the speakers that I recall was P.G. Law, who headed up the Antarctic expedition, and Neil Roberts at a later stage went down there in charge of that same expedition. And he told a fascinating story, once again 65 years ago. And the next one I want to talk about is a rabbi. And the rabbi's name was Rabbi Danglo. Now, when you look back in those days where multiculturalism didn't exist and there wasn't what you'd classify as open aspects of various religious beliefs, Monday morning, 65 years ago, we had Rabbi Danglo address the whole school assembly. And it shows you that culture existed that far ago and is still prevalent and strong at the school today, where religion and all the barriers of differential between kids does not exist. When I was there, 40% of the kids were Jewish. Today, probably 60, 70. Mr. Principal, what is it? What's the average years of, or the countries that the kids are from today?
Two largest groups would be Chinese background and subgroup kids.
Fascinating numbers. In those days, the Monday Assembly would start with "I love God and my country, I'll honour the flag, I'll serve the King," and the last words were very, very special. They were profound. "And cheerfully obey my parents, teachers, and..." Right. And these silly politicians took it out of the system. I'm fortunate enough to be able to speak fairly straightforward on most of the teachers that I had while I was at Melbourne High School. It's quite interesting that I have the recall of these. What I'm talking to you about tonight, I've done no research on. All of these came to me, and this is the first time I have ever taken notes to put together a speech. And I'll start with George Langley. George was a very special leader. And one of his great ones was, "If better is possible, if better is possible, good is not enough," and would hammer those points home. And another one of his was about the Camel Corps, which he was involved in the 1914-18 war. On one occasion, 10, 15 years after I had left school, I had dinner at his house in Munro Street with he and his wife, and had a remarkable dinner for a 30-year-old being with a 70-year-old at his dinner table at home and talking about the school and his life's experience. Eric Mann was a Form Master in Form 3, and his game was yachting, and he loved that. Daddy Douglas was the art teacher, and he tried to teach us how to draw and paint. Artie Larson, of course, those that were there under Artie, an incredible character. Last year, when I went to the centenary of the Anzac celebration in Gallipoli, I met his son, who happened to be the Australian ambassador to Turkey, and we had a wonderful time. Frank Sambleby, with the cross-country run, he'd sort of be doing an audit who was running past everyone. And on that occasion, I ran third to David Hatton, who came second to Ron Clark. And Sambleby said, "I didn't see you." I said, I was running. But I sort of went round the bicycle track the other way, and I came in third. I got away with it, but he gave me a bit of a grilling. Ben Munday, of course, an incredible character. He looked after our football, and a fellow called Stewie Robinson. Stewie was an institution at Melbourne High School. But the one that I probably owe a lot to, did many of you do Latin? Okay. The words porto, patas, patat, patamus, patatus, patam. Little did I ever think that those words would have such an influence on my life. I carry, you carry, we carry. So I'm quite sure Strauss in his grave would love to have heard that those words had an impact on my life. Then I come to my form master. the second period that I was in, Form 3. I'll tell you what, not too many have done 2 years in the second and a year and a half in the third. Now, Wilbur became a very special friend. He used to come, after he went on to Scotch College, where he was the economics master, he'd come home and tutor my kids, and became an individual that was there 1 or 2 nights a week, and he'd stay for dinner, and we got on tremendously well. And on one occasion, Andy, that is one of my cheeky sons, he's the only one in the family that could sell a nun a G-string and traded in on a pink one the next day. And he looked across at Wilbur and he said to Wilbur, "What sort of a student was Dad?" Saying, "Geez, I'm going to get the old man here." And Wilbur looked at him and said, "Your father was an excellent student. The biggest problem was the teachers didn't know what to teach him." Very interesting. And when you think about it, if somebody's interested in what they're being taught, they pick up and get the benefit from it. It's often said, behind every successful man, there's a surprise mother-in-law. No doubt my teachers wouldn't be that different than my mother-in-law. But they will never know how much influence they had on my life, or understand how important their role was. Foundations are built on family values. Education becomes an extension of those family values. Great leadership makes great leaders. Our teachers set a great example for all of us. 15 years after leaving school in 1968, I attended an old boys' luncheon at the Green Room Club in Queen's Road. If you look on your table, there is a copy of a letter I wrote to Wilbur Cortis at that particular time. The brig was the guest speaker. Wilbur Cortis, my form master, was the MC. At that time, I just completed the contract with Courage Breweries, and at the conclusion of the lunch, Wilbur opened his wallet and withdrew a note and gave it to me. And you can read it on your table there. And the letter that I wrote to him after I left school 15 years ago, or 15 years earlier, I bought him, I worked for 2 or 3 weeks and bought him a Conway Stewart fountain pen. And this letter is the 1st of February 1954. And the letter said, "Dear Sir, this present is in gratitude to your patience and the way you helped me to try to pass my examinations. Whilst I was under your guidance, I had the best and happiest times at the school. Presently, I am working for myself at Rosebud, hawking fruit. And as soon as I'm back from Rosebud, I am starting as a building apprentice. I also thank you and Mr. Langley for the wonderful report that was put in my report book, and I hope I can do justice of your report. Yours sincerely, Foxy." He told me this was the only note he'd ever received from a student, and I have always believed in a promise made is a debt unpaid. So I get a great deal of satisfaction seeing that I fulfilled my obligations to Wilbur way back in 1954. The friendships I share from school days for over 65 years are testimony to the glue that exists at Melbourne Boys High School. I will never fail in support of my old school, which I owe so much, in spite of being an academic failure. I have been so fortunate to be able to say I went to Melbourne High School. In closing, a couple of the Briggs' favourite one-liners was "a promise made is a debt unpaid," and his other one was certainly, "if better is possible, good is not enough." I'm fortunate enough that there are no school records of my report book. I managed to get them out of the joint, so nobody can do an audit on me. Thank you.